I hope for those that went with us into the break, you have replenished your cup of coffee and ready for yet again another lengthy discussion on one of the most pertinent issues of the day, and as a country, disaster preparedness. We are putting that into context as well, because the Uganda Red Cross will be part, or is part, of the World Red Cross and Red Crescent initiative. And of course, May 8th was the day that the World Red Cross and Crescent Day was commemorated. But I do understand reliably that the entire month of May is dedicated to initiatives and, of course, amplifying the issues within the mandate and the workings of the Red Cross and the World and the Red Crescent, I must say. Before I introduce my very eminent guest this morning, allow me give you just a brief preamble about the World Red Cross Day and Red Crescent Day, which is an annual celebration set on the principles of the International Red Cross Day and Red Crescent Day. This is in memory of Henry Dunant, who is the founder of the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and recipient of the first Nobel Peace Prize in 1901. This is a bit of history. Now, the Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross Society, Robert Kwesiga, is in studio this morning to help us understand the history of the organization, but also bring us some perspective on disaster preparedness and management. A very warm welcome to the program, Mr. Robert Kwesiga.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and also good morning to our listeners and viewers.
Yes, in my introduction, the words Red Cross, Red Crescent kept going and overlapping. And many times a Ugandan out there might not know the Red Cross beyond the word Red Cross, so that they might confuse the Red Crescent and might not understand the relationship, which is very intimate. Do you mind giving us, just explaining to us the connection and how exactly it comes to be, that, and why the 2 days are separate? Red Cross Day, Red Crescent Day. We would appreciate that they are combined.
They are not separate.
They are not separate.
It is, we call it the Red Cross and Red Crescent
Day.
Movement.
Movement,
so we use the word movement.
okay.
Then the Red Cross Day is 8th May of every year. But then we use May, the month of May, to celebrate, but also tell the story and also reach out to the public in order to promote the Red Cross cause, its mandates, but also as to how we can fulfill our mandates.
Yeah.
And so the question you asked of the difference between the Red Crescent and the Red Cross, they are the same, maybe different words. But then the Red Cross or Red Crescent is enshrined in the Geneva Conventions. If you have heard of the Geneva Conventions, these are conventions around the wars, how to manage wars, especially for civilians, to protect the civilians, but also the wounded and the injured who are combatants, but also promoting the general humanitarian perspective, if I can summarize it that way. And so the Geneva Conventions provide for the Red Cross as that independent humanitarian organization that has to be given space to reach out to the people in that kind of situation. And so all state parties that are signatory to the Geneva Conventions are obliged to establish the Red Cross by legislation in their countries. And so Uganda, being one of the states that is signatory to the Geneva Conventions, that's how the Red Cross was established by an act of parliament in 1964. And that's what happens in every other country. Now, the name Red Cross or Red Crescent, which is, I would say, gazetted within the Geneva Conventions, comes from when the Red Cross started. The founder, it becomes simple history, but maybe it has a lot of meaning. The founder, Henry Dunant, who started the Red Cross, also which was in the context of the war. I don't know why human beings like having wars. Was a Swiss. And you know, the Red Cross, the Swiss country flag is a white cross with a red background. So in honor of the Swiss government, which even when you go to history, it was all neutral. You know, these
it has always taken a neutral stance on
Switzerland was always
global politics.
So this was in honor of the Swiss government, but also this guy who was a Swiss, and then they made they did the reverse of the Swiss flag.
Okay.
Whereby now it is a white background with a red cross. So it has nothing to do with religion. That's where people at times get confused. Even the way the cross is, they are just basically 5 squares, whereas the one of the religious cross is very long, and you know, they don't look the same.
Okay.
But this emblem is protected globally. That when you see it, it means the people who are using it mean well. They are not taking sides. They are independent. They are basically there to save life and serve humanity. Now the crescent came in because as the Red Cross was being adapted and taken across the globe, some countries had a bit of problems to accept the cross. So that's where at times situations get confused. And so the state parties, the Geneva Convention, sat and said, okay, we can make an adjustment and have the crescent. But even there is another symbol which is neutral, which is a red crystal, for those who may not be comfortable with the cross or the crescent. But the name globally is the Red Cross, Red Crescent. That's how it is.
It's a very interesting dimension there, of course, and the need to accommodate any diverse way of looking at it.
And be global, you know, what is global? Getting consensus, you have to make adjustments and compromises, yes.
All right, so within the context of Uganda, the Red Cross has been part and parcel, of course, you say established in 1964. Many times when disaster strikes, the Red Cross or actors of the Red Cross are usually one of the very first responders. When you look at the trajectory of our response to disasters in this country, I'm sure the Red Cross has a lot to offer in terms of what can be improved and how it can be done, because you're part and parcel of it. But before we go into anything else, we have the most recent happenings in Bulambuli, the landslides just over a week ago. I do not know whether efforts, humanitarian efforts, of course, are rolling out, and you are part of that as part of the multi-sectoral approach. Do you mind giving us an update?
If you allow, I can start by giving it a broader perspective. Then
we shall be honored.
One of our cardinal mandates is around disaster management.
Okay.
Like I said, during the Red Cross month, World A, we tell our story in broad terms of what we do and how we can make it better.
That's right.
And so our mandate does not start and end with disasters. It goes into all aspects of humanitarian work, which keep evolving. I will just give an example now. One of the aspects that has evolved over time is now around climate change, and which directly feeds into disasters and the rest of it. Now, if you look at Uganda, the Red Cross, what we do is broad. It can be about the natural, the man-made disasters, the pandemics, climate change, I've mentioned it, but also we reach out the public to do the social good when we talk of blood donation, road safety, first aid services, promoting voluntarism and all that. So, and today, these are things we'd want to put out to the public again and inform the public. So, but when it comes to disasters, the report, which is which is at the center of what we are going to sell to our program today, what we call the Global Disaster Report. So the Red Cross, after every 2 years, produces a World Disaster Report. And this is a very well-researched document, and it is usually used by academic institutions. So it is a research document, and it is interesting. Right. I would encourage everybody to read because it is interesting.
That's right.
So the one for this year is around COVID pandemic. The lessons learned from COVID pandemic, and how can we avert the next global crisis. But then the report does not limit itself to COVID. It looks at the global disaster situation, and it dwells on how prepared were we, how prepared are we, and how prepared are we going forward.
That is right.
But also trying to emphasize the whole question of, if you are to be disaster prepared and be able to respond, then you must have the necessary tools at a local level, what we call the local action. Because the disaster or an emergency or whatever humanitarian situation starts and ends at the community. The other actors, but the community is the one which bears the brunt. So it starts there, and when it ends there. And so the report mentioned that globally, across the world, we were not prepared.
Yeah.
And even those who thought they were prepared, they were not of the magnitude of the disaster that was being responded to. But even where we are, if another disaster of COVID magnitude hits the world, we are still not prepared. And so, leave alone the scientific research, leave alone the tests, leave alone the other science at a broader scale. But the question at hand is, how do we prepare the communities who are the recipients of these disasters, so to say?
That's right.
And so that's how the Buramburi issue comes in. I thought I should give it that context.
Sure.
Because the Buramburi issue, we know that unless we are well prepared, we are going to repeatedly be going to Buramburi, going to Bududa, going to Chisoro, going to Kasese, and now it is even the magnitude is expanding to areas which never used to have disasters. So then we can't keep it that way. And so today, you asked a question about Buramburi. The rains are still ongoing in the Mount Elgon region. Predictions are that they may intensify as we go into June and the rest of it. And so, what is it that we must do to save life and save property? And what is it that we must intensify and do better? And this is around what we call early action for starters. And early action is about how do you gather information and how do you disseminate information to the community. The beauty of it is science now provides us the right predictions. You can easily predict what is likely to happen. By the way, even these days, you can predict the war. Yes. Yeah. You can do data triangulation and predict the war.
I mean, just the beginning of the show, we were reading a spy master who has told us that in the next few months, a major war is going to erupt in the DRC.
You see? So, but the public, I'll just give an example. If our meteorology department says the rains would be normal to average, what does it mean for a person in Buramburi? So you have to break it down. What does this mean? Whether it is about how they are going to manage their livelihoods in terms of agriculture, but also the likely disasters. So that's what we call by early action. So how do you manage information dissemination, but also how do you prepare the people that this is likely to happen and this is how you're supposed to respond? We are talking of intensifying the whole aspect of preparedness. That yes, we can avert, but in case it happens, how do we respond? And respond timely. But also, how do you make sure you don't necessarily wait to respond if you know that the facts are against the status quo? And that's the context of the Buramburi question. Then the question is, do you want to keep the people there, knowing that they are living in a danger zone? And if you have to keep them there, what are you going to do to make sure that the next episode over the disaster, you don't lose lives again
find them,
and doesn't find them as vulnerable? And so it is multi-sectoral, and the government is at the center. And the whole question of the Mount Elgon region is people who are in the dangerous geographical zones to be relocated. They have been doing it. As you know, they have been relocating some of them to Burambutie, which is in Buramburi district. Some years back, others were relocated to Chigandongo. But now, according to government, the information we have is that they are now going to move a good number of them and giving them cash such that that becomes like a stopgap measure, which is more concrete. But the question of disasters in the country and now which are multifaceted. So it can be climate change triggered, but it has elements of pandemics. All these pandemics we're experiencing, which are on the increase. The other day, the WHO Director General was saying we should prepare for another pandemic because we have entered into the ecosystem which was reserved for animals. So what do you expect?
Interesting there.
The population pressure on the natural resources
is also increasing.
Is increasing, so automatically it is a trigger for more disasters. There are things we do which we shouldn't be doing in terms of preserving the nature, and so we are at times we are our own enemies. The way we carry out business, and so for the Red Cross this month. Which is also the climax being today, is tell the public that, wait a minute, we are not living in a normal situation because we can't wish away these emergencies, we can't wish away these pandemics, we can't wish away these disasters. And how do we plan to avoid them, to mitigate them, but when they happen, to minimize their impact on our livelihood, on our lives. And so that's the thrust of all this that we are doing today, where we are having an event at the President's conference hall at the Prime Minister's building. We have all the stakeholders.
This is just across the road.
Yes, so you can even walk there for you. Presided over by the Prime Minister, but we have brought on board all the stakeholders. And what we mean by the stakeholder is that it being a multifaceted issue, where it cannot be government alone, it cannot be the Red Cross, but you need the private sector. So want the private sector to come in, and they have a direct interest. Just again to use Woodwood as an example, if you are a private company or institution doing business in Mount Elgon, whichever business you are doing, and the disaster comes, and the people are displaced, the people lose lives.
Your market is
the market. So we talk of the shared value. That you have an interest to make sure that the people in that area stay alive, remain with their economic livelihoods, because that's how you make money. But how do you become part of the solution? So the private sector, the international community, they are still having a mandate. The development partners, but under the coordination of government. So we are having that event, and again, recommit, revisit, see how best we can do in promoting local action vis-a-vis the pandemics or the epidemics. But in between, there's a whole question of how do you ensure that the public trusts you? Because you see, if you say go for vaccines,
public trust.
So the whole question of public trust,
is important.
The whole question of equity, because COVID exposed to the world that the equity is a big problem. And how do you intentionally make sure that those who are very disadvantaged economically or otherwise are not left behind? Because short of that, then you get vaccines, you are targeting me and you. You try to take them to the community doesn't trust you, so they are wondering whether this another way of population control. So it is a full package. It is a full package, and that's how we are saying that it can't be isolated to few institutions. It is a holistic approach, and each and everybody has a role to play. But as Red Cross is we have a mandate, as I've explained.
That is right.
And how can we do it better? And how can we get more support to perfect what we do in saving lives?
Talking about perfecting what you do, especially the intervention that involves fast response, allow me just bring in a context that an average Ugandan out there could perhaps be, would want to understand a little bit more. We have seen incidents where it is only a Red Cross guy responding, and then much more later is when you see the police or the other medical services. I'm not trying to compare who is better doing the job or not, but before the Red Cross responds, has there been an effort to empower the public that may not be either members or actors or volunteers, for that matter, within the Red Cross, with the skills to be able to attend and respond effectively before the first aid, expert first aid comes in? Is there a relationship between the public and the Red Cross, especially for those that are not volunteers, active volunteers? You could also explain about the volunteering scheme and how people can join.
That's a very interesting question, and thank you very much. You see, all that I have just described, you don't wait for it to happen, and that's when you start mobilizing the troops.
That is right.
Then it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
That is right.
The enemy will always overpower you. And so the Red Cross, what makes us unique, if I may use that word, what makes us unique as a trusted first responder, but an institution that is well positioned to manage disasters or any emergency, is because of how we are structured and how we are positioned in the community. So for starters, we have a team of volunteers. In Uganda now, there are over 500,000 volunteers, and we are looking for more.
Wow.
Yeah, we are looking for more. And these people live in the communities.
That is
so they live in the communities. So then we give them the best skills and the best tools, and we can do better with more resources. We can do better, such that they are better equipped with skills, but also with the instruments that can help them carry out this work. And then they are supported by what we call branches, our local management structures, which are branches, which are basically around districts, tied around districts. So then, whether there is an emergency or not, but in between those emergencies, we ensure that these volunteers, these members, are being given skills, are being equipped, such that when something goes wrong, like you have said,
that's right,
they are there because they're already part of the community. I can assure you, my dear brother, that every day I can know whatever emergency has happened in any part of the country. Someone's house got burnt, someone got an accident, because they give us the information.
Okay, there is a very, the monitoring, what can I call it, a monitoring system is that effective that you know what is happening in Kabong, in a community as close as...
It hasn't reached the level that makes us comfortable. And that's one of the writing calls we are making to the public, to government, to the development partners.
That's right.
That help us strengthen that structure, help us strengthen that system, because information is power, because we use that information to timely respond, to timely take decisions, but also to timely mitigate.
That's right.
And we could do better. That's what I could say. Yeah.
All right, allow me return to the World Disaster Report. Of course, the context here for me is local action. What you'll be sharing is a set of ways that you can be able to foster collaboration, especially with the other players in the humanitarian sector and disaster response. Uganda has, over the years, moved as though, and I must be very categorical, as though we do not have a comprehensive disaster management and preparedness plan. engagement is ongoing, I believe, between the government and other sector players. I do not know whether you are comfortable to offer any updates on any efforts that is ongoing on that front, if there is. But with regard to the World Disaster Report, a local action within the context of Uganda, what is being looked at in terms of where is the attention being focused? Is it at funding? Is it at re-engineering our mechanisms in terms of infrastructure, how to respond quickly? Or is it down to the fact that, well, if government is doing what it's doing, we are here to support?
You have to look at it at the various levels, both at the national and the local level. I'll explain what I mean by local.
Okay.
At the national level there are those mandates or assignments to the national government, but also the national actors. And what do I mean by that? So, do we have a national disaster plan? Yes, we have. Is it up to date in terms of capturing all the emerging trends, including pandemics? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe when you read this report, maybe the adjustments we need to make with our disaster preparedness plans. But we have the plan, and it's a very good plan. Okay. The way it is, even before we talk of reviewing it, it serves the purpose. We can always make it up to date and make it better. Do we have the necessary legislations to support disaster management? There are gaps. There are gaps. For example, we don't yet have a national disaster legislation, disaster management legislation. Paperwork has been worked on. It is still in the process because this is a national legislation, and it is taking a while. But we need maybe to speed it up, because that framework clearly defines on how you can do it backed by legislation. Then you don't have to go for executive orders or other mid-term decision makings, where you can always have a legislation that covers that. So that one is yet to be fixed. Do we have enough resources? Not yet, but our request is government should make it intentional. Make it intentional, because this is the reality. The reality is the disasters, whether pandemics, whether climate is triggered, they are on the increase, and we have to live with it. So you have to make it intentional and allocate resources. And you know there are various government sectors which are part of it. So on how you support those government sectors, because the very moment you only trigger the disaster fund, when the disaster has already happened, you always do the catch up. You are like fire brigade. You miss these aspects of action, preparedness, mitigation. So resources, and also development partners, whether UN agencies or others, how are they intentionally supporting that? So that is at a global level, the coordination, the resourcing, the legislation, the policy framework. Now, at the local level, we are talking both at community but also local governments. Do the local governments own this? And that's how we have been working with the local governments to develop their district disaster profiles, making the district disaster committees active, because you can't do it even if you are not close when the local leaders are not working with you. Now, then it takes you to what must be done at the community level, which to an extent I've already talked about that. You need the public to have these responders who have the skills, who have the basic equipments, to tell the public what are the dangers likely to happen, to prepare the public on what not to do, but also to make sure that, because these disasters, you can prepare, you can mitigate, but in the majority of cases, they always happen anyway.
They always happen anyway.
But when they happen and you are well prepared, and you have done all that I've just described, you will have less people who will be impacted negatively. And the people down there have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's where institutions like the Red Cross. So the institution like the Red Cross is that we have the tools. Give us the means.
You have the tools, but most importantly, you have international momentum, the ability to quickly galvanize resources faster than local actors. And that is perhaps something that gives you a little bit more leverage than any other actors in the humanitarian
You have
space.
said it. So we are a member of that global movement. So the tools.
So the aspect of
as part of that,
constraint on tools and resources must not be...
Resources are a constraint. My brother, resources are a constraint. But there are tools we have. I'll just give you an example. If tomorrow we get a big emergency, like if you remember when the South Sudanese refugees were crossing in thousands every day.
That's right.
We had to bring in water treatment plants and position them on the River Nile.
Yeah.
And we started producing clean water. We can, within no space of time, fly in even mobile hospitals with theaters. But that is the magnitude of the problem. So, but that tool, it shouldn't be the kind of emergency we are witnessing. You don't necessarily call for those kind of equipment. The resource we are talking about is all that we do, we are calling upon the Ugandan community, the Ugandan enterprises, the Ugandan government to support. Because the global community, they are having their own problems, by the way.
Yeah.
The global economy is on the downward trend.
And the taps have already begun closing.
The big powers are also no longer as big as they were. They also have problems in their backyard, like COVID. Everybody was looking at their backyard.
That's right.
But by the way, even the money we get from those countries comes from their governments, from the taxpayer.
From taxpayer.
And so we are trying to make
donations, individual
a paradigm
donations.
shift.
Yeah.
That let the work we do be supported first and foremost by Ugandans, by the government, by the corporates, by us as individuals. Now, then the international community supplements, not the other way.
Not the other way around.
Yes, and that's how it can be sustainable.
Okay. Shortly, we shall be going back to the very first aspects we talked about, especially in understanding the mindset and the thrust that men like Henry Dunant bore at the time to be able to be this visionary, to know and understand that the world needed an initiative as helpful and as impactful as the Red Cross has become. But before we do that, I would be remiss if I do not take you to Namugongo and ask, in light of what is no doubt one of the largest gatherings in the world of people, there will be a sea of humanity, especially Friday and Saturday. What are the plans in place? Do you mind taking us through the Red Cross arrangement? I'm sure the boys and girls are there. My reporters have seen them, but you, like the traffic police or the police has briefed the public on preparations, the Red Cross would also be well positioned to give us an update and reassurances, especially on interventions for those that might find themselves in need of help.
The Red Cross, we have been with these pilgrims, even from their home districts.
When they were setting off?
Yeah, so because...
yeah, you said you're already in the communities.
One, we are in the communities, but also two, we have these ambulances, which are for road safety. You know, we have ambulances positioned the highways for road traffic accidents, which are on the increase, by the way. And so this country, we must do soul searching. The accidents on our roads, they are not
unacceptably too many and too rampant.
So these ambulances and our volunteers, they have been working with those pilgrims along the way. In the case some of them either for whatever reason, can't continue the journey, or maybe they get something that is of emergency. But coming to Namugongo, we are on the national medical platform to managing the situation in Namugongo. We have already our ambulances there. So those which we are accompanying them, some of them plus those in Kampala, they're already in Namugongo. You must have seen our teams in our Red Cross jackets, very distinct. And I can say proudly, and I think nobody can contest it, that among the actors who are there to provide medical health services, we are the most prominent, and I can assure you we are the best. Because our teams are well trained, they are well equipped, and our ambulances are the state-of-the-art ambulances in this country. And so we are living to what is expected of us. And again, the Red Cross is in the community, and this time in the community of Namugongo.
All right, thank you very much for the reassurance. Not necessarily update because you've been in it, but of course that assurance is pretty much needed. Now, allow me to go back to the legacy of the gentleman called Henry Dunant, of course, born on the 8th of May. That forms the thrust of the World Cross. 1828 in Geneva, Switzerland, and died on the 30th of October, 1910 at Hayden, Switzerland. The reason I'm going back to this particular start, the formation of the Red Cross, is to understand the mindset of a generation, to understand and look forward that in the coming years, the need for intervention in case of war or pandemic will be so enormous that state actors alone will not be sufficient, is what forms the gentleman's legacy. I'm not trying to say so many people must come out right now and also begin to, with visions that will be celebrated in the future. But I think it is one that we ought to understand. Anything that you can bring us up to speed with, a reflection or perspective on his works before the formation of the Red Cross?
You know, the perspective I can pick is a person like Henry Dunant and others of the like. They had a vision and they lived the vision for humanity. So, and they changed the world. That gentleman and those who supported him at that time changed the world. The Red Cross is everywhere, and you can see how it influenced, whether they are talking of all these international conventions, trying to make sure that in as much as human beings will always have disagreements, whether it is war, or there will always be issues beyond the human capacity, but how do you ensure that human life is always kept at the center? So they live the dream, but also they practice the dream. Now, the challenge the world has now, but you know, it is an evolving situation. You can't say we don't have such people in this world currently. But if I bring it to the Ugandan context, is the challenge we have is how do we ensure that we are there for the other? In as much as we want to have better economic well-being in order to better ourselves, but we have that cardinal role of doing something good for the other. And currently, we can do better.
That's right.
Yes, everybody talks about money. We run programs in communities. Just to give an example, all that we do is in communities. But you call for a community meeting and maybe you are talking of how you can help them access safe water. Just as an example. And people expect you to feed them, expect you to give them allowances. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. We thought this is for your own good. But you see, the context, how it is evolving in a way that does not promote what people like Kenny Dunant stood for. And so I think it is upon us. We can't say it is an event. It is a process. The Red Cross and all of us and we live by example.
That is right.
That we can do it. We can make it happen for the other. I was in Varamburi last week, over the weekend. The people who were displaced, they have been hosted by their relatives, by their community members. They are not into IDP camps. And we are talking of over 250 families. 250 families, that is almost, if you look at an average family of 5 people, that is over how many? Over 1,000 people.
1,000.
Now, you see, those elements are there. But how do we make sure that we use them as the rallying point to doing better? So, people like Henry Dunant, they did their part. People like Jesus, they did their part. Muhammad, they did their part. You know, I'm putting them in one group because they influenced.
That is right.
Their legacy still lives. People like Gandhi, Liberia, and also in Uganda, as individuals, we can play our role in promoting that kind of perspective, that we are there for the other, and the world is a better place to live in if all of us make our contribution to serving humanity.
All right, talking about one of the existential threats to humanity today, climate change. And many of the response initiatives that you undertake are tagged to the fact that climate change is the trigger of some of these events. I do not know within the space of interventions with regard to climate change mitigation and adaptation, the Red Cross has a plan, or are you part of it already?
We are part of it already. We have our... by the way, we are making it intentional that climate change is our cornerstone program. And everything we do in one or another touches climate change. These pandemics you are talking about, and which are covered in the report, by and large, if you go backwards, climate change is at the center. When you have to respond, climate change is at the center. All these emergencies we have in Uganda now, floods, landslides, droughts, because now we have extremes. Too much rain, next day, no rain, too much heat. Too much. Too much food.
Sometimes it confuses.
At the time of harvest, too much food. Next month, people are starving. You see, so we go for extremes, unfortunately. But at the center of that is about climate change. And climate change at times is not about as if it is coming on us today. It has been an accumulation of things we are not doing right, both at the national and global level. And so, how do we mitigate? How do we not make the situation worse? And so, as Red Cross, we are exercising this through our disaster management programs. And the main emphasis we are having is around what I've been talking about is how do we make sure that those areas which are at high risk, because we have done together with the government, we know we have the mapping of districts that are at high risk, I think over 20 districts, which are basically around the Mount Elgon, Mount Rwenzori, Mavura, along the riverbanks, dry areas like Karamoja. And how do we package the mitigation efforts, the area action activities, but at the same time, how do we make sure that if things go wrong, we are there? So, in broad terms, that's what we are doing. And when we talk of support to the Red Cross, we are saying, yes, when it goes wrong, support us to respond. That is right. But before it goes wrong, support us to make sure it doesn't happen.
All right. Thank you very much, Robert Kwesiga, Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross, on the perspectives on disaster management, but most importantly, that you have just educated us on many things that I think are embedded within the report. If you don't mind, I don't want to put you in a position to say no on national TV. Can I take this World Disasters Report book?
You have said it. You have said it.
Okay.
I can let go.
All right. I'm sure there are so many out there.
I can also make a demand to NTV that since you are taking my copy of the report, you have already supported us. Maybe I should mention it. You have already supported us.
We
are very
always
grateful.
glad, always glad.
And we always walk this journey together. But we count on your continued support on how you can help us tell the public,
That is right,
and the audience that what we do and what we are trying to manage is real, and it is a rallying call to each one of us either to support or make sure that you are not caught on the wrong side.
That is
of
right.
what we are trying to address.
On behalf of Nation Media Group, I would like to say we are honored to be part of this and to amplify any of the aspects that you are up to as an organization in the humanitarian space.
Just a quick one. On your media, in the media, do you allow me to say something which is not within NTV but about other media houses?
No. For now, we can have a conversation in the boardroom.
Because I wanted to first on the message to the public. If you don't mind, being a public event supported by government.
Okay. If it involves the national broadcaster,
yes,
no
so
problem.
UBC is going to give us a live coverage today of the event taking place at the Prime Minister's office. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
And I was cautious. I don't want to say, hey, why are you...
Perfectly understandable. But
and they are doing it not because we are paying them, but because they are treating it as a national event.
Perfectly understandable.
And I call upon the public to tune in to UBC and listen more to what I've just shared in brief.
There you are, the Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross, Robert Kwesiga. That will do it for the Kickstarter discussion. And of course, it's just approaching 20 minutes to the hour of 9 o'clock. Morning at NTV does continue. Do stay with us. We shall break for now. Thank you.